Check, check, 1, 2. All this and more is for you. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Dr. Funk live show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and subscribing on YouTube, Facebook Live, Spotify, Apple Music, and everywhere else. Thank you guys so much for your donations. Today is a super special show where we're discussing the first album by the artist Prince entitled For You, and also we're going to be talking about Mo Ostin. Our special guests today are going to be Tommy Vicarri and Owen Husney. You guys may be more familiar with Owen than Tommy, and we're going to correct that. Tommy was put into a hard task of having to work on this album along with other things. I'm going to allow him to discuss that, and I do not want to waste any further time. I thank you guys so much. Canada, Australia, already up here in the room, everyone watching worldwide. I'm not going to waste any more time. I want to bring in an Emmy Award winner, Grammy Award winner, a person that did work before Prince, did work after Prince, is still doing work. And I'm very, very thankful to have him and Owen on. Our first guest right here is Tommy Vicarri. Thank you so much, Tommy, for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. And another person that we have on as well, and we've had on our audio version of the show, is Prince's first manager, technically, of Mr. Owen Husney. Owen, thank you so much. Good to see you again, my friend.
Good to be here.
I'm glad to have both of you on. Now, unfortunately, a little over a week ago, we got some news of the passing of Mo Ostin, albeit 94 years old, but he was such a legend of the industry for so many different reasons, from Sinatra to Prince to other artists and to labels. And Mo did play a huge part, as well as yourself, in getting Prince the contract that he wanted. What was your relationship with Owen and with Mo, Owen, and how everything came to be to getting the record contract, and then that's going to work into with Tommy? How did everything transpire?
Well, my way to Mo was kind of through someone else who eventually became chairman after Mo. It was a man named Russ Thyrett. And I had written some ads, oddly enough, where I had used an 87-year-old woman who is an actress to do a local store called the Electric Fetus in Minneapolis. And now we're going back to ancient history here. We're going back to the 70s. And somehow Warner Brothers got wind of that ad with the old woman in there. And she was very talented, wonderful, wonderful person. And lo and behold, I get a request from Warner Brothers in Burbank, out there in California. I'm back in Minneapolis, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa. And they said, can you write a couple of ads using that woman? So I did. I wrote a Little Feat ad and recorded it and sent it to them. And I did Randy Newman, Good Old Boys, and used this actress and set it off. And they used it and they loved it. So initially I was going to probably, and it was all through Russ Thyrett, who was record promotion at the time, one of the best record promotion people ever in the business. And I struck up a relationship with him, and we became friends. And so the road to Mo led through Russ. And I was actually I'm going to make this a very short story, even longer, but I'm going to try to cut it down. I was supposed to actually go out and be in the marketing department or head of marketing at Warner Brothers. And I flew out, and just before I bumped into Prince, and I went to everybody's house. I went to Stevie Nicks' house. I met Albert Grossman, the great manager. And but I never went to bed. It was just the record business 24/7. Nobody ever slept. It was just going on. And I was supposed to spend a week inside the company. And on Friday, I just booked a plane flight back to Minneapolis. And I went into Russ Thyrett's office, and I said, Russ, I'm out of here. I haven't been to bed in a week. I love rock and roll. I was a musician. I was on tour. This is a grind I'm not used to. I'm a Minnesota guy, you know. So he said, well, we're going to go see Mo. You got the job. You're going to embarrass me. And I said, Russ, I'm out of here. And he said, well, we're going to go see Mo. I said, I'm sorry, I'm on a plane. I will figure out a way to make this up to you. And actually, the reason that I brought Prince back to Warner Brothers, besides the fact that inside the company, while I was supposedly getting a job there, I noticed that there was a tone in that company that was artist first. You know, a lot of record labels are business first. Oh, you didn't sell 100,000 units, you're out of here. Oh, you know, somebody doesn't like the drummer in the band, he's out of here. Whatever. And Warner Brothers, it was so unbelievable to see how they were artist centered. And I really got a great picture of that. So I figured that Warner Brothers would be a good place for Prince. I needed to get two other labels bidding in a bidding war because we needed to get what we wanted.
Right.
And then during the time that we were out here going to all the labels shopping Prince, to three labels basically, Columbia, A&M Records, and Warner's. The whole time I knew I wanted to be at Warner's because I knew that they would get it. I know that Lenny Waronker, who was president and a music-centric guy himself, was just all down for the arts. He was down for great music. And I had met him and I knew he was wonderful. And I thought, because Prince wants to make music for all people, he had told me that just hanging out at the house. You know, when I get signed, I don't want to get typecast into a specific thing. I don't want to be like just an R&B artist. I don't want to be this kind of artist. I want to make music for all people. I knew that Warner's would get that. So, all right, so I worked the magic that we needed to do to get him signed to Warner Brothers. They gave us 3 albums firm, which Mo had to agree to. He was the chairman. No other label would do that. I had see, my voice is cracking. I had to go, but the ink wasn't even dry on the contract. And Prince says, Owen, go up and tell Mo, nobody's producing me but me. And I believed in him. So next thing I know, I'm up in Mo's office. The contract's not even dry yet. And I'm saying to Mo, Prince wants to put, now, Prince had never made a full album, let alone at a major recording studio.
Right.
And Lenny conferred with Mo, and they gave us 3 albums firm, which is unheard of in business. They allowed Prince to produce himself, but they did say one thing, but that was the magic. And let me just say this about Mo before I forget. Mo set the tone for that entire company. Mo came in with Sinatra. Reprise Records was kind of theirs. That was given to Sinatra. Interesting thing is, not too much later, Jimi Hendrix is on Reprise Records. And I know that Sinatra probably didn't get that at all, but that's the way they were. So anyway, the tone in that company was set from the top down from Mo. Right. And that's where the magic happened. And Warner Brothers was dramatically successful. They believed in their artists. Lenny Waronker on down and on up, they all got who Prince was immediately. The other labels were kind of like, we'll have this guy produce them. Even Warner Brothers wanted us to have a certain producer, and Prince absolutely flat out refused. They actually wanted Maurice White from Earth, Wind and Fire. And Prince wrote me a note, and he was very respectful. And he said, I respect Earth, Wind and Fire. I know their work. I know where they are, but I don't want the imprint of that sound on my music because I want to try to do something completely new.
Understandable.
I had to go relate that to Mo and to Lenny Waronker, and it took a few movements, but they finally said, "We get it. We get who he is," and I knew that we were at the right home to establish his career. But then they came to me and said, "Okay, if Prince produces his own album, and we're going to give that to him, we need an adult in the room." I said, "What do you mean? Should I get my dad in here? What are we going to do?" He said,
Right.
"We need someone who's got gold and platinum on their walls already to be an executive producer to oversee it." And lo and behold, that was Tommy Vicarri. He was the adult in the room. And because Tommy came in, and I'll let Tommy tell you how he heard everything, but because Tommy got it too, and because he and Prince kind of bonded initially, Tommy became the adult in the room, and Tommy became the guy that it never would have happened in the way that it happened at the beginning without him, for sure. And I was there. So that's kind of where it led up to. And I'll just tell you this real quickly. We were going to do the album at Sound 80 in Minneapolis. And I had set up a little place for Tommy to stay and all this kind of stuff. And Sound 80 at the time had done a Cat Stevens album, Blood on the Tracks. Bob Dylan was done there.
Yeah.
And so it was a real state-of-the-art studio. And Tommy came in, and why don't you pick it up from here? I get a call from Tommy one day. But Tommy, I'll let you tell the beginning of this and then lead up into the studio and why we moved.
And now we're going to hear stuff from him instead of hearing the rumors that we've heard for the past almost 50 years, for him to clarify everything and how it happened.
Well, I guess we should go back to the beginning of it, and then I'll get to the studio. I was in San Francisco, and I was working on a record with Carlos Santana called Moonflower. And Warner Brothers contacted me and said, "We have this kid that we just signed, and we'd like to know what you think." And so one night after working in this studio, I slept late the next day. But the tape came, we were staying at the Miyako Hotel. And the tape came, a cassette, the reel-to-reel and the cassette. And my wife, I was asleep, and she put the cassette in my little car and started driving around the city. And about 12 o'clock in the afternoon, she came into the bedroom and she woke me up and she said, "Get up." And I said, "What do you mean, get up?" She said, "Just get up." And she put the cassette into the cassette player. And I listened to the first 3 or 4 songs, and I said, "Who is this?" And she said, "This is who Warner Brothers wants you to produce." So I said, "Okay." So I called my manager at the time, and I said, "Look, Warner Brothers wants me to do this. Would you call and make the arrangements?" And he calls me back and says, "You know what? The deal's not right. Don't do it." I said, "Look, just work it out. Okay. I don't care what the deal is. I knew there was something really special about this kid, And so that's kind of the way I was introduced to it. Then as it proceeded, the plans were made. We were going to go to Minneapolis, and I was cool with that. And I knew Sound 80 was a good studio. And but what they had done is they had put a new console in the studio that we were going to work in. Now, when you put in a new console, there's a beta testing period. There's things that aren't quite connected right, and so I was going to have to be beta testing this room while producing this debut album for this 17-year-old phenom, and I thought, okay, and when we tried, I did a few sessions, and I would do things like I would, now don't get me wrong, Sound 80 is a really nice studio, but I would, hit an EQ button and the toaster would go up, and things like that. It was just, I said, I don't really need this kind of distraction while I'm trying to engineer and produce, which is not the easiest thing to do. Okay, and of course, there's also the caveat that Prince was the producer, and I wanted to help him through this process. It was his debut album, and so that's kind of how it happened. So then we decided. I talked to Owen, and I said that maybe it would be better to go to Los Angeles, but Prince certainly didn't want to go to Los Angeles, and neither did Owen, and so I suggested San Francisco, and I went. I had just finished work at the Automat, which was owned by David Rubinson, and in San Francisco there were two major players, and there was Bill Graham and David Rubinson, and David had a studio called the Automat, and so I went to David and I said, "Listen, I got this kid, and Warner Brothers wants me to do this record. Can I bring him here?" And David, look, I really like David, but David did this thing. He said, "Well, I just don't let anybody, use my studio." And I went, "Oh, really? Okay." So I called the record plant. And they said, "Sure, come on over." And that was even better because it was really away from the city, and it was more isolated. It was on the wharf, in Sausalito. And there was two studios, A, B, and then Sly Stone had a studio in the back, which was called the Pit. And the console was in the middle of the room, and everybody sat on seats around the console because Sly recorded everything in the studio, in the control room. So we packed up. We found a place in Corte Madera in Sausalito. We all moved in together, and we decided, and we went to work, and that's kind of how it started,
And let me just say we were all in one house.
All in one house.
Prince, Andre Simone, Tommy Vicarri, myself, my wife, and our family dog. And the whole family moved into this house in Corte Madera.
Something I will never do again, by the way.
Now,
we did a lot of practical jokes in that house.
For sure, and I could see why Tommy wouldn't want to be part of that. Now we're dealing with LA heat here. I know in the Bay Area it isn't as hot, but that house was particularly hot because Prince liked it hot in there, right?
Well, there were three floors in the house. There was the bottom floor was where Prince had his little apartment with all his records and all. And you're talking about a 17-year-old kid, okay? There's some stories about Minneapolis too. I should probably go back to, but in Corte Madera, Prince had the bottom floor. I had the middle floor, and Owen and Britt had the top floor. And so Prince. Northern California is really not that cold, but Prince had the heat up to like 95, and as you know, heat rises. So the higher it got, the hotter it got. And so I literally had to pull my bed over to the window and open the window so I could breathe because it was so hot, in that room. But he was a 17-year-old kid, and in his room, there was just nothing but records and magazines and his guitar, and so. But before that, when I was in Minneapolis, I went to Minneapolis. When you were tell the story, Tommy's coming. I went to Minneapolis and I went to his apartment. We were going to have a meeting, and so in this, I've told this story several times. I go to the apartment, I knock on the door, and Prince answers the door, 17-year-old kid. And in the apartment there was a one-bedroom apartment. There was a kitchen, one bedroom, and a living room. In the bedroom was a waterbed and a poster of Chaka Khan. And in the living room, he had 45 singles nailed to the wall, all across the wall. And then there was garbage. And so I said to him, we were supposed to have a meeting in this place. And so I looked around and I said, well, why don't we go out? So we ended up going out and having dinner. And then we decided to go to the movies. And we ended up to go see Star Wars. And so I went to the theater and I pulled out some money to the cashier, and she says, I can't cash that, so you guys just go in. So Prince and I are the only two people in the theater, sitting in the first row at the beginning of Star Wars, the very first Star Wars. And it was, with that spaceship coming overhead. And we did kind of like it was really fun. I mean, it was, so that's kind of how I met him in Minneapolis. And we tried for a while to make Sound 80 work. But when at one point at Sound 80, I did get a call from Lenny. And Lenny wanted to know, basically the crux of the situation was, Lenny wanted to know, is he for real? And so now I'm in the mailroom taking this phone call, and Prince is standing right next to me. So he can hear the conversation. Okay. And Lenny says to me, so Tommy, is he for real? And I said, yeah, he's definitely for real, and at that point I thought, well, I've really bonded with this kid now, it's just like, this is going to be great, and it was for a while. I mean, we did complete this record, but then along the way there were little stumbles and things like that.
Well, let me give you a little context to this. Just
Pardon me?
A little context to all of this is that when we think of Prince, probably our mind goes to this incredible musician playing for tens of thousands of people with an entourage and limousines and private jets. We got to go back in history. And when Tommy and I were there, this was a kid who was just this kid from over north, as we used to say. Very special indeed. But you have to keep in your mind's eye that he was just a young teenager,
17,
albeit brilliant. But don't picture the entourage and all of the stuff to what he came to be. Just picture this kid, and you wanted to protect him. That's
I did, and I have been ravaged in some ways, but I was also described as kind of a big brother, and I took on that persona. I really, the idea that the legend or the myth is that I fought him along the way. I resisted everything he wanted to do, which was the farthest thing from the truth. Because if there was anybody that wanted this record to be successful, it was me. Because I knew this kid was like the future of the record business. For this was a really special situation, and I wanted to be a part of it, and I wanted it to work. So the idea that I had somehow resisted or fought him along the way was farthest thing from the truth. I had been working. The reason I got this gig was because I had been working with Gino Vanelli and Billy Preston, and Gino Vanelli records were both nominated for Grammys for engineering, and so Warner Brothers took note of that, and so when we went to Sausalito, I got Graham Lear's drum set for him. That was he was playing with Santana. I made a deal with Korg synthesizers to get him a Korg synthesizer. I tried
in, someone for keyboards.
Yeah, Korg. It was a Korg, and I think.
No, I mean you brought in another artist to kind of.
Oh, I think it was Richard. I think it was Richard Baker. I think Richard Baker was in. Those guys had gone from Gino's band to Santana, and I went up there to work with Santana because of them, and that's why I was in San Francisco. So yeah, so I tried to give him the equipment that he needed, and then from there, anything he wanted to do, I was very receptive to it and did whatever I could to help him do what he wanted to do. And I mean, starting with a click track, guitar, and overdubbing, we would do one song a day and start with a click track and a guitar. There was nothing. And then, overdub, keyboard, strings, horns, all the things that he played. The kid played everything. I mean, it was amazing. But along the way, I mean, I did thousands of punch-ins. It was only a 24-track studio, and a very nice studio with an API console, the Westlake room. It was very nice. John Fogerty's in the next studio. I mean, it was. We'd go to work every day, about 1 o'clock and stay till 6 o'clock in the morning. So, I mean, it was like the thing about living together is I could never go home. I'd get up to go to the bathroom and I'd see him in the hallway. Oh, hi. Oh, hi. Your hair is so, it was, if I laid down on the couch, it was like, I mean, it wasn't, you had no privacy at all.
So, Tom,
but besides that, I really didn't mind it that much, until there were a few other incidents that happened that I just,
So I have a question for you, Tommy. Pretty much Andre Simone was in the studio with him the whole time. Is that correct?
Yeah. And Andre and the two of them would do these midnight jams and things that were just amazing. The two of them. I mean, watching the two of these guys play off each other, it was amazing. I could see the ability to affect, to do live performances. It was just really something special to watch, But there was a point where, being 35 or whatever, after working, 14 hours, I wanted to go home, and they just kept going, So sometimes they would stay late, and Steve Fontana, who was the assistant engineer, he would stay, and he would tell me, Prince would say, "Gee, I wish Tommy was here." Tommy is home going to bed, after being there for 14 and 15 hours, it was like, okay, I've had enough. I gotta go. It's like, so
that work ethic throughout his entire career, 35, 55.
Yeah, there are people that are just bionic, Rod Temperton, Quincy Jones were like that. I mean, I think they did Thriller. They stayed up 24 hours a day. They never left the studio. And I was in on some of that stuff, and I used to say, I can't keep up with you guys. This is crazy. I would, tell Quincy, why don't I go home and get some sleep, and we'll do it in the morning. He says, no, we got to do it now. And then the next morning I get a call, we got to redo it. And I said, yeah, I know, because, after so many hours, you kind of lose your objectivity, it's like, so anyway, I don't know how we get back to.
Did you have Patrice Rushen at that? Did you bring?
Well, yeah. See, I had produced Patrice Rushen's first album on Fantasy, her first solo album. I was the producer on that, and so there was a song on the record which I think was started it's a song called "Baby," and I think it was started by Chris. And there was a track already, and we augmented it, but it needed a string section. So I called Patrice and I said, "Listen, there's a kid I'm working with that I'd like you to meet," and she agreed, and she then later came and did she wrote the string arrangement on "Baby," especially with the lyric of the song. I thought it was particularly profound that a woman would write the string arrangement on this song, which was about him having a baby with his girlfriend, so and then later on they became very good friends, which I found out later that they had talked a lot, and actually Prince wanted her to be in. I guess she appeared on Saturday Night Live with him. She played, and Prince put her name on front of the keyboard so everybody would know. But they became very good friends. There's a great story Patrice tells about when Purple Rain came out, and she was in New York City, and Prince called her up, and she said, she said, "Where are you?" And he says, I'm in the restaurant. We want to come down." And so she said, you're in this hotel in the restaurant? Yeah. So she goes down. He's the only one in the restaurant, and he was really nervous about the debut of Purple Rain. He was really and she was, she said, look, I know you. I know this is going to be okay. And of course, we know it was. But they became very good friends, and she worked with him a lot. So, and I had Patrice work on a lot of other projects with me, because I had you talk about Maurice White. I mean, I had a 5-album deal with Epic Records with Philip Bailey. We had a production company, and we did the Daz Band, and we did a group called Splendor and Free
Philip
Life.
Bailey being Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah, Philip Bailey being of Earth, Wind, and Fire. I didn't had nothing to do with Maurice White. That's a whole other story that'll be told someday. But anyway, yeah. So we did some with the Daz Band. I had Patrice do the arrangements on some of that. So I knew she was a pro, and she was very, very good at arranging. And I thought that I had her do arrangements on a lot of different records that I was involved with.
And Patrice was on that Saturday Night Live performance of Electric Chair.
That's right.
About him being nervous, because you were there when he first met Sly Stone and a few of these other people. How did those interactions go? I know that you regret that there was not a camera in the room.
I wish I had a cell phone. Well, I had worked on a record called The Riots Going On, because I was working with Billy Preston, and then I was working with Billy Preston at A&M Studio B, and I get a call and they said, Sly Stone's on the phone, he wants to talk to you. I said, Sly wants to talk to me? I said, so he tells me, I get on the phone, I said, Sly. He says, listen, I want to come in and record. And I said, it's a Friday night. I said, okay, I'll finish this up, and you come in on Monday. He says, no, I want to come in tonight. And I said, well, I'm kind of working. He says, no, there's going to be a change of life unless I come in tonight. And I figured, then I realized there was going to be a change in my life if he didn't come in that night. So they proceeded to come in and set up in Studio A. And I'm telling you, they recorded everything in the control room. So I come out of Studio B working with Billy, and I look at Studio A, and they have the grand piano up on its side trying to move it into the control room. It was never going to fit, And so anyway, I worked on this record for Riots Going On, and Billy and him, and I ended up with Billy and him, and, watching the sun come up, and with an 8-track at John Phillips' old house at 6 a.m, and Sly would play a few notes and say, go to another track, but anyway, Sly came in to say, came into the record band because they had a room there. He had a room in the back. And so he comes in to say hello, and Prince is there. And I introduced Prince to Sly Stone. It was like introducing the past with the new generation. It was just an amazing moment. I'll never forget that as long as I live. I have a photograph in my mind of it. And I thought to myself, I was thinking at the time, this kid is going to kick your ass. And in some ways, you can't say that really, but right. It really was a changing of the guard, if you say. I mean, it was really the future of R&B in popular music. And I could see it, and to see the two, together was pretty awesome,
Right. If I'm not mistaken, go ahead.
No, I was going to bring it up. Go ahead, Owen, because I'll ask the question for you after this.
If I'm not mistaken, I remember the pit, which was Sly Stone's room, so to speak, but I remember it as a giant tongue.
Well, that was the bed. They had a bed. They had a bed that looked like the Rolling Stones logo, and the tongue was the bed. Okay, and the tongue was the bed, but it looked like it was the lips, and and then there was these platforms around the console, and the console was sunk down into the floor, and everybody sat on the ledges around it. We didn't go in there a lot. And he wasn't really working on anything. He just happened to show up. And
I have a secret. I went in and laid on that tongue.
That's taking it. Did you get any shots afterwards?
What was great was that I looked on the sides of the tongue, and there were inputs to plug guitars into.
Yeah.
So he could just be sitting there doing his thing or whatever, or a keyboard, I guess, on his lap or something. and it was a pretty amazing room.
No, listen, Sly made great records. You know, he was an innovator. You know, I mean, I love those records. You know, I mean,
you know what? Prince really respected Sly because Sly sort of had a band of all colors, if you may. Sly Stone, he broke the mold too. Sly took R&B to everyone.
That's
make
right.
Music for everyone, and Prince had enormous respect. And then I'm going to lead you into this, Tommy, with Larry Graham, who invented the best frickin' bass guitar playing anybody's ever heard in their lifetime. But
yeah, he preceded Louis Johnson and Bootsy. You know, there was those guys were like really the you know, yeah. But Larry, I don't know if Bootsy. I think Bootsy might have came first, and then Larry was, you know, and you know, Sly would play. They would play the groove. The drummer they would play for 2 hours, you know, and just keep it funky all the way through. You know, I mean, it was. I remember Andy Newmark when we were doing rides going on. He just kept playing, and they would just keep. You know, I went in there, and the control room was filled with cables all over the floor, and I had and Sly had all these bodyguards, you know, and they're all these guys, you know, these Italian guys, you know, and they'd be yelling, "Where's the clavinet? Where's the clavinet?" 3 people would yell at me. I said, "Okay, give me a minute, you know, I'll find." And I'm looking for it, you know, I can't really find, you know, I finally find it, you know, but it was kind of chaos, you know, and so I always thought I never saw, you know, the genius of it. I only saw the chaos of it. You know, there's some great stories that we don't have to go into now, but yeah, I mean, Sly, you know, that was a poignant moment for me to see the two of them together, and then of course when Chaka came in, that's a story. Now I know this has been told several times in different ways, but what really happened that night was we were working on a track called "Just as Long as We're Together," and Prince was playing bass, and he was a dynamic bass player, you know, because he loved Larry and that sort of bass playing, and so Steve Fontana comes in, the second engineer, and he says to both of us, "Anybody want to talk to Chaka? She's on line 2." And Prince goes, "Chaka's on line 2?" And so I knew what it meant to him. He says, "Yeah, she's looking for Sly." So I tell him, I said, "Go ahead, pick it up. Pretend you're Sly." so he picks it up, and he goes, "Hey, baby, what's happening?" And he's talking to her like this for about 5 minutes, and he hangs up, and you know, he's just thrilled. 17-year-old kid talking to Chaka Khan with the poster in his bedroom on the wall, you know. So we continue working, and about an hour later, the door opens, and Chaka Khan comes through the door and sits down next to me at the console. And she came in with 3 other people in the back. They sat in the back. So Prince finished playing the take, puts the bass down, and leaves the room, and leaves me with Chaka Khan. And so Chaka turns to me and goes, "Wow, that's great." I said, "Yeah, this kid is really something." She says to me, "Where's Sly?" So I said, "Okay, here's the deal. There's the 45s on the wall, the poster, you know." And so when you were on the phone, you know, he got excited, and so, you know, she was kind of cool with it. You know, the people that came with her were not so thrilled about that kind of a story.
Yeah, what was interesting was after that happened, that the night when that happened, Prince gets home at whatever it was, 3 or 4 in the morning, and I'm sound asleep up on the 3rd floor where it's 150 degrees, and I feel somebody poking my shoulder, and my wife is next to me. We're in bed, and it's Prince, and he says, "I just met Chaka Khan." I just, like, he couldn't believe it. He was like a young kid, so excited. And then
yeah, I knew when, you know, when Steve came in and said she's on line 2, he looked at me and said, "She's online too." I said, "Pick it up, say hello."
We
and
did a lot of practical jokes. Trust me.
never expecting her to show up. I never expected her to show up, but then after, it was all said and done, when she left, Prince was at the door, outside the door, because he never came back into the studio while I was trying to bail us up both out, So she opened the door and he's standing there, and she went up and she pinched his cheek and she said, "You're pretty cute." And, and there was the first meeting, and so, and that's how it happened,
And then years later, he gave her one of her biggest hits ever.
That's right.
Yeah.
Crazy how that all worked out. Now, another thing that wasn't at the studio, and I want to make sure it's told because we want to get back into the music, and that's going to keep things rolling. Because at that time it was really huge, Roots. Now, Owen, you were telling me about when he met LeVar Burton. How did that come to be with that night?
Well, that's Owen's story, yeah.
Yes.
Well, Tommy got us tickets to the Grammys.
That's another story.
Well, this is the LeVar. And so Tommy got us tickets to the Grammys. I'll let you tell that part of it. And Prince says, "I don't have anything to wear. I'm going to the Grammys." We were back down in Los Angeles at this time. And Tommy's wife, Deanne.
Deanne. Yeah.
She made Prince the outfit that he wore to the Grammys. I have a picture of it someplace. It was beautiful. And Tommy got it. You want to tell the story about the Grammys, or should we just go right to the part?
Well, for 2 years previous to this, I was nominated both years. So I'm on the floor with all the celebrities, So I'm thinking, oh, you know what? I got this. I'll get the tickets. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. So we get all dressed up. We get a limousine. We're in a limousine, and Prince and my wife and Owen and his wife, and we all fall out of this limousine.
I've got a picture of you and your wife in front of that limousine.
Yeah.
Picture inside the limousine. That's pretty famous.
Yeah. So we come out of this limousine and we walk up to the door, and I show the guy the tickets, and he looks at the tickets and he looks like he points to the balcony. So we didn't get tickets on the floor. We got tickets in the balcony. So my introduction to Neris, or to bring Prince to Neris, was they made us sit in the balcony, the first time. So it was very embarrassing. I thought, this, and I'm not a member of Neris ever since. But anyway, it was it was just one of those things, but it was part of the lore of that album, all these things can't happen. But what else, Owen? There's some Andre was there most of the time. Andre was there, and basically we had a very cordial relationship. The other thing I was talking about, or when being that he was 17 years old and he was so protective of his he was very shy. So whenever he would come whenever people he didn't know, when he and I were in the room, it was like me and him, we would talk about anything. We were like, that was the big brother thing. We were talking everything. But if someone else came in the room he didn't know, he wouldn't say anything. He would just not say anything. So they'd come in and say, "Prince, how are you?" And I'd say, oh, he's fine. I would have to answer for him, and so it was a few uncomfortable situations. There was one time where Lenny and I don't think it was Mo, but anyway, on this song, I think it was "So Blue," or "Crazy You," could have been one of those two. It was the one about the bass, right? Where I had a fretless bass on it, and I doubled it and I put it on both sides, and he had a box that he really liked, called a biphase, and we put this conga in there, and it made it sound like dripping water.
Not supposed to tell anybody.
I know, and he made me promise not to tell anybody. So sure enough, Lenny comes in and we play it back for him. And Lenny says, Prince, wow, that sound is great. What is it? And I said, well, I can't tell you. And Lenny says, what do you mean you can't tell me? He's the president of the record company, you know, or head of A&R. I don't know. He says, I said, well, Prince made me promise I couldn't tell anybody. So there was like silence for a few minutes. And then Lenny says, well, you know, it's not that great.
I think on the album he called it Water Drums. If you look
Water
on
drums. It was a conga that we put through a biphase. Yeah.
it had a very, very cool sound to it.
Yeah. There was another one where we had a tree chime, where we had a bell tree, and we put it through that biphase. And I had the hardest time cutting that. The lacquer, the cutter, just went no, fuck it. They just said it wouldn't cut it. I mean, we went to Bernie Grunman. We went to Mastering Lab. I think Mastering Lab ended up cutting it, or I'm not exactly sure. But the cutter to vinyl, it just would distort whenever it got to that spot. Somebody finally got it. I think it was Bernie. I think Bernie finally got it to cut. You know, but and then Bernie ended up doing all of his albums. Even after I had gone, Bernie Grunman did all of Prince's albums, you know, and
explain to the people that once the album is completed, it has to be mastered. And there's what's called a mastering process.
Yeah, this is where you bring in the individual mixes. You bring in the individual mixes. Like I have all these 7-inch boxes, all these mixes, you know. This one is a Crazy You, So Blue, Take 10, Take 13. I've got Just As Long As We're Together, Final Mix, you know. And then you know, I would bring those home, and then we'd have the tape copies from the record plant. I mean, I'd bring those, and as you can see on there, they would say, you know, producer Prince, Tommy V, which is, you know, and Warner Brothers, and so. And they would have tones and stuff. And what you do is we'd take the final master and we bring it to a mastering facility. We would make all the levels match, and you know, we would EQ them so that we, you know, there was continuity to the whole album, which is a pretty, you know, natural thing for you to do on making records. Some people nowadays, a lot of people master in Pro Tools, but I always went to I mastered almost everything I did with Bernie Grunman or Doug Sachs, a couple times with Bob Ludwig in New York City, you know, but most of it was Bernie Grunman because I met him at A&M Records, where I worked for you know, like 4 years as a staff engineer. So anyway, yeah, I don't know what we could go. What else could we talk about?
Well, the recording process, but the practical jokes that Prince would play, were you the ones that would be done on you? Is it because you were an easy target, or why were you being picked on, Tommy?
You know what? We did practical jokes. I think, and this is great while we're live here. I think Tommy thinks that we did it because we wanted to kill him. But it was not that. It's just he wasn't there, and Tommy had left to go into San Francisco, into the city, and it was my idea. I said, let's play a practical joke here. I had learned when I was at camp as a kid, not last week. When I was at camp as a kid, we learned how to take our clothes and stuff them with our clothes. So you take a pair of pants and you stuff it with your other clothes, and then you can stuff a shirt, and lo and behold, you're going to have a body. So Prince took it to the next step, actually. But I said, well, we were going to go to a movie, and Tommy said, I'm just going to go into San Francisco. I've got some friends that I want to see or something. We would take a Sunday off, which was rare because these guys
Really
are
rare, yeah.
around the clock. And Tommy needed a break, and we all needed a break because it was very, very, very intense making. And the practical jokes came out of the intensity of what was happening. So at first you get in there and you start recording, and the first days that we were in Sausalito, and you're doing it, and then almost all recording projects, at least from my experience, get to a very, very intense time. There's moments of truth, moments of reckoning, and everybody's working their butts off, and you're getting frayed from doing it. So one of the great things that we would do would be to do practical jokes. So one of them, and the most horrible one, was one that we played on Tommy when he went to San Francisco. So I brought up the idea of stuffing our clothes and making a body out of the clothes and putting it under, since Tommy wasn't there and we were, putting it under Tommy's bed. So you couldn't see the head, but it looked like there was a body coming out from underneath his head. And I said, God, he's going to think somebody is dead in his room. And we all chuckled and laughed and, everything. And then Prince said, he goes off into the kitchen and gets a butcher knife out of the kitchen and puts it through the shirt, the back of the shirt. So now it looks like there's a stabbed body underneath Tommy's bed. Let's get one thing straight. When he did it, we were all laughing, and then I went, oh, shit. This is my shirt. He just put a knife through us. And then Prince takes it to another level, and he runs into the kitchen, and he gets a bottle of ketchup, and he kind of puts it around the wound of the knife. So now, and then you put the shoes at the end of the pants, and now you've got a dead body underneath you. So we're all giggling and laughing, and then we went to the show. Andre, Prince, my wife, and myself, we all go to the show. Well, here's the way I remember the story, but I remember pulling back up to the house, and I'm pulling back up, and there's no lights on. And I'm thinking, well, this is not a good sign, because it's, it's like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. There's no light. Where's Tommy? And I just remember going into the house, and Tommy's kind of shuttled back someplace. Because what happened? You walked in?
Well, I walked into a dark house, and I went to the second floor of the bedroom, and I opened the door, and I turn on the light, and there's a body in my bed with a knife in its back, which scared the hell out of me. And I don't even remember if I checked if it was a real body or not. I just got the hell out of the bedroom. And, I really don't recall after that. Now, at that point, I figured, well, I guess, either this is a joke or this is how they really feel about me, And
it was not. It was my idea.
I just thought, but it's okay. I have a photo of it. It's been in several books or something like that. But it did scare the hell out of me, And I thought, especially
what? Retrospectively, after it all happened, because I realized how freaky that would be to come home and go into your room, and there's a body under your bed. And I realized, that was really mean that we did that, but we all got a good laugh out of it. Tommy didn't
David Rifkin says they had a great laugh out of it and everything. But look, it was, we talked yesterday about.
Right. So I apologize on
it. That's okay. It's all right. I'm older and wiser now. It's okay. It's all right.
Did you get Owen back, or did you get Prince back at all? Was any practical jokes done?
No, not really. It was, I was kind of, I had the responsibility of bringing this, making this record happen. Warner Brothers was kind of counting on me, so I was pretty focused on that.
Tommy had to be the adult.
Yeah, I was pretty focused on that. We joked a lot. And at that time, doing those tracks one at a time. I punched in thousands of times, every drum fill and every, it was really a strenuous. And like I said, it was like 1 in the afternoon till 6 in the morning. and then I'd go back and go to sleep, and then come back at 1 o'clock again. And pretty soon you get into a zone. You're just into a zone, where you don't know what time of day it is. You don't know what week it is. It's just a zone, So at that point, there was a certain point in the album where, there started to be some dissension. I thought, there was a song we were doing called "Make It Through the Storm," and it was just a rough mix that I threw together, and I was going to go home for the weekend or something, and Prince said, how come you didn't tell me this vocal was out of tune? And I said, well, it was a rough mix, it was a rough vocal we put on before the thing, and this started to kind of build up a little bit. And so, there was a point where when we did the opening part of the opening For You, there was 50 vocals. He was really adamant. He wanted to have 50 vocals. And so he wanted David Rifkin to come in, and at that point I wasn't really going to fight anymore about it. I just said, cool, bring him in, because I was, engineering, and I said, if you need his ear to make sure we get through this quicker, I was all in for it. I just fine. It wasn't, that I couldn't handle it. It's what the kid wanted. So I said, okay, fine, let's do it, and I wanted to, because at that point we were going to go from Sausalito down to Armin Steiner's Sound Labs, and we were going to mix, and this was the premier mixing studio in Los Angeles. This is where I mixed Gino Vanelli. This is where this was the best. At that time, this was the best mixing studio in Los Angeles. So I was bringing in this record that I wanted to, I wanted this to sound like a professional production, and so it was something that I was really focused on. There was a thing Owen talked about, Prince saying that he thought he tried to be too perfect. Well, that could be my fault. I wanted it to be something extra special. I did. I plead guilty to that. I did. Because if you compare it to "I Want to Be Your Lover," it's not quite as sonically sophisticated, but the song just kicks ass. It's a great thing. And by the way, Prince, I thought, got better throughout the years sonically. He really got better. In some of those mixes, "Thieves in the Temple" and "Beautiful Girl in the World," "Diamonds and Pearls." There's so many of them that they just got better and better. So perhaps I had something to do with that. But I did want it to be something. To me, I wanted it to be able to cross over to pop music. I wanted it to be available for both mediums, R&B and pop, and so I was pushing in that direction, and I think so was he. So I really don't think that was the reason the record was, didn't happen the first time. The thing that I've been dealing with over the years is that this record just kind of disappeared. It was never considered his first record. It was just like when the record came out, I remember one of the things that there was special thanks on the record, and there was a lot of people that got special thanks, and I didn't get special thanks on any of it. I thought, all the work. So there was this, I don't know what happened. It was like, I knew that I was through at that point, and I think that's fine. All those things happen for a reason, because I went on to do a bunch of other things with George Duke and Jeffrey Osborne and Howard Hewitt.
But the first album really was not a flop. And I'll say it for a couple of reasons. It sold like 175,000, 200,000 units, right? It had to build. He was an unknown artist. And I'll tell you something. There's a great thing called a natural progression. And I'll give you an example. So many artists and book authors that have amazing successes on their first albums or on their first books can't, once you have that kind of amazing success right out of the box, very hard to go back and duplicate it. A lot of expectations. So I look at For You as the beginning building block, first step to Prince's career. That was, if Prince would have had a smash and sold 10 million on that first album, now people are going to be comparing his future albums. He's going to, it only sold 6 million on the second album. That's a failure. Much better to have a natural progression of a growth in sales than to have enormous success. Plus, Prince was learning along the way, and Tommy was teaching him because they were in the studio together. Prince had never made a full album before. And Prince has this amazing ability to be a sponge. You know, all he has to do is be in a room with you for a while, and he's already gotten your mind into his, and now he's on to the next. And I don't say that as like there's some magical spherical thing about this. He just has that ability, and I've seen it more than once. So anything that might have happened between Tommy and him, or the special thanks to him, it's Prince just had this ability to be able to learn from you, take it all in, and sometimes take it to the next step. You know.
And he did, but there was this narrative that was going around that you know, I somehow was fought him along the way. That it was like, you know, and you know, I spoke to Lenny about it, you know, and he said, Tommy, the record was not a flop. He said, we didn't expect to get those kind of sales till the third album. He said, you did what you needed to do, and you gave him the opportunity to become the artist he was, and I'm comfortable with that. I am comfortable. You know, I would be dishonest if I didn't say I was a little hurt about it, because I really loved the kid and the music, and I really wanted it to work. So I appreciate being able to tell the real story here, because I've listened to I've read a lot of interviews and a lot of articles that just really, I mean, you know, I told the story to you the other day about the Minneapolis Star, and they wanted to do an interview with me, and I made a policy of not doing any interviews, and they wouldn't take no for an answer. So I finally said, okay. I said okay, and I made a decision. I said, okay, I'm just going to say nothing but positive things. I'm not going to bring any of this up. And I did an hour on my Sun deck out here, saying, you know, how great he was, and how, you know, if it wasn't me, it would be somebody else. And, you know, it was just glowing, raving about this kid. And at the end of it, the guy says to me, well, you know, he's been quoted as saying he had a terrible time with his executive producer. How do you respond to that? And I said, well, how the hell do you expect me to respond to that? I said, like, only thing I ever did is try to help him. If he has a problem, then you better ask him. And I said, end of interview. And I hung up. And that was the last time, until recently, when some people, you know, after the 40th anniversary, people started talking about it. But to me, the first record was always kind of like, it just really didn't happen. I Want to Be Your Lover. That was the start of the first. Even some of the articles that For You is not even mentioned. But, you know, I've played For You at the NAMM show sometimes, just in the PMC booth, and people come in and say, when did you record that? I said, well, I don't know, 1975. And you know what? It holds up. You know, it's okay. And maybe that perfection I was going for, you know, it was warranted, or, you know.
You have to think of it as a kid rebelling against his father.
Yeah.
Not that there was anything that done, but he's trying to prove himself, and he's trying to buck all the odds, Prince is. And Tommy is the dude in the room, and there's going to be a natural amount of rebelliousness. And that's all part of the creative series, the creative system. That's all part of how creativity works. Sometimes you have to prove yourself, and you prove yourself by coming up against and rebelling. And but when you look back on it retrospectively, it was all necessary because it was the beginning.
Yeah, something that proves that basically was the first time I heard the single "Soft and Wet" on the radio was, the first time you hear something you worked on the radio, you're kind of thrilled or shocked, But I heard "Soft and Wet," and I thought, wait a minute, this is not my mix. This is not my mix. And when did he bring out the greatest hits record? He brought it out. It was like, must be 10, 15 years later. And then he put my mix on that record, and he put my name on it. And I thought, I guess that was his way of saying, some form of apology or something, or just saying, you know what, in fact, this was better, and I may have screwed up. So, I come to terms with all that stuff. I mean, I really don't, I consider it, I do consider it a privilege to have been in the beginning of this phenomenal artist's career, and having that opportunity, and having Warner Brothers give me the responsibility of doing that. And it took me a minute to get over it, but I'm pretty comfortable with it. And I've gone on to do a lot of other things that I would not have been able to do. And, I would have loved to sat down with him later on in the years just to see how he was, but that never happened, so.
And just, with the Larry King interview that he did in 1999, to him, his first hit was "Soft and Wet."
Really?
First known.
Oh, that I didn't know.
Yeah, his first hit was "Soft and Wet." Whether it was your mix or not, he thought that was it. Now, of the 9 tracks that are on For You, and we talked about one unreleased of "Make It Through the Storm," how many others were there that were not used on the album? Because we know how prolific he was. How many tracks did you say that were done for you that did not make it on For You?
I think "Make It Through the Storm" was the only one that didn't make it, because we basically redid the demo. We redid the demo track by track, except for "Baby." "Baby," I think I had a rhythm section. He may have overdubbed the drums. We did keep some of "Baby," but we did do string arrangement, and we probably did keyboards and things like that. But every other song on that we redid from scratch, so one track at a time.
"Make It Through the Storm"? Do you know
what happened to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's got the demos on that, and it's actually.
I have it. Anyway, I have a copy of it here someplace.
I actually have a copy of it as well, and I know that Prince wanted to turn it more into a rock song because he talked about.
Well, the thing was it really kind of didn't have the structure of the song. Kind of didn't have a chorus, It kind of just structurally it didn't. I think it didn't make it, Even though I liked it, but I know that Jeremiah, you were talking about cassettes and things like that. Oh, here, "Make It Through the Storm." Right, make it right there. "Make It Through the Storm." What is it? 11/4/77. That was right out of the studio there, and then then this came out. I don't know if you guys remember this. Pink
Cashmere.
It's what's the name of the song? It's Pink Cashmere, and then "Soft and Wet" is on the B-side. "Soft and Wet" is on the B-side. So wow. I know you were talking about cassettes coming back, and stuff, but anyway,
for now, yes,
I do have all this stuff that's just been sitting in my stereo room for years, but I'm open. I thought about well, what would I do with this? Maybe donate it to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or something, or the you know.
I would love for it to be a Paisley one day.
Well, maybe they, you know.
That's all I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. Do they have a you know? I'm not. I've been in contact with someone who was put in charge of Paisley, who was actually working. He worked for the for Graceland as well, and was hired to work for Paisley Park.
This may have been a few years back.
What?
This may have been a few years back, right?
It was well before the plague. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not there anymore. I don't think that person.
I would like to be a Paisley one day. We'll see what we can make happen. But sorry to interrupt the Graceland story. I just
that's fine. No, but I, you know, they told me, you know, that you know, maybe you should come and do you know, like a class or something, talk about the record, making of the record. In fact, I want one of those shirts you got.
They should take care of
Is
you.
it a part of your merchandise? Is that what it is?
Yes.
But anyway, yeah, they, you know, I've never been there. I've never been there. I know a lot of engineers that went and then came back and stuff, but
now, and I have questions about the tracks, of course, because there's a lot on here. Look, this is super slept on. Because I'm looking at, you got Just As Long As We're Together, you got Crazy You, Soft and Wet, Your Mix, you know, My Love Is Forever, I'm Yours. Now let me start with this, because like I said, heavily slept on, a lot of great cuts on this. Just As Long As We're Together, because there's parts where he isn't hitting the falsetto, it's a little bit of a deeper voice. Was there a little bit of inspiration maybe with Sly being around at that time, and not just an influence to his career, but I'm just curious on just because that takes an interesting flow. And of course, that being like the B-side to Soft and Wet, Just As Long As We're Together, the disco mix, which is a little bit different than what's on the album.
First of all, it's about 6 minutes long, I think, right? I mean, the time is 6:24. I think that's one of the best songs on the record, basically, and one of the best mixes. Because it goes through, you have the song in front, and then you have that real instrumental section at the back, you know.
Right.
You know, and his playing and the arrangement, I think, is one of the best ones on the record. I'm not so sure it was because of Sly being around. He didn't want to be influenced, you know. I tell the story about a few weeks ago. I saw a video of a Stevie Wonder concert, and Prince and Stevie was playing Superstition, okay, and Prince comes on stage and taps Stevie on the back, and then continues to play, keeps playing Superstition. Okay, well, one day on the way to the studio in my little car, we're driving to the studio, and Superstition comes on the radio, and so the 17-year-old Prince leans over and turns the radio off. I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I don't want to be influenced." And I looked at him and I said, "That's one of the reasons I'm not there. Wasn't there." I said, "You know what? It's too late. You've already been influenced. There's no way not to be. I mean, we all learn from you didn't. I've had this with several artists, by the way. You didn't invent these 12 notes. You know, this was all here before you, and at some way or another, we learned to talk by imitating other people. So it was really ironic that see all of us, see him come and play with with Stevie after that incident. And I told that story on Facebook, and hundreds of people responded to it and thought that was kind of cute. But yeah, well, what other questions you have about songs?
Of course, like say with I'm Yours, because he was still, he did that with Third Eye Girl a little bit, but more so with the New Power Trio in 2009. He was doing I'm Yours, and
that's one I wish I could. That's one I wish I could redo, because it's just
really?
It's really just because it was so different from the rest of the record, and it was really Jimi Hendrix. I mean, it was a really kind of a Jimi Hendrix combined with Prince, because he goes into a falsetto, by the way, he sings falsetto. There's two songs on that album I would love to have another shot at. And one of it is In Love, because it was a total synth record, and I just think, I mean, look, I go back over the records I've done and I go, damn it, I wish I could do that again, I mean, but as far as is Crazy You, I think, yes. What's the one? Is it So Blue with the acoustic guitar? So Blue?
And then
I think that's one of the best songs on the record. I've been told that some of the people really love that song. It's just him and acoustic guitar, and it's so soulful, and or because of Crazy You. Crazy You is the
as well.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to Say In Love, because you can totally hear the disco vibe in it. Of course, they put a little bit more bass on it, you can get a little bit of a house groove going on right now, which would be really cool. But, it's just so interesting. You say, it's what about My Love Is Forever? There's nothing in that you would want to change, is it? Because
no, those are the only two. Those are really the only two that I think I can make I'm Yours a little bit more interesting, because there's a whole long intro, outro where he's just playing guitar. He's just doing these, he's answering himself playing guitar, and I think I could make the drums a little fatter and make it a little bit more interesting. But it's like, it's history, and that's just where it was. This thing's that happens to me a lot. I like to go, I hear that and go, damn, I should have put more bass on that, but it is what it is.
And before I have a question for Owen, before I ask this, what was the longest recording session that you had? Because back then, people have to understand that are watching this now, you had to lay down each track one at a time. You couldn't be doing this stuff. What was the longest session that you had on one of the songs from For You with Prince?
You mean in terms of hours? We were trying to get like a song a day, but that's not to say, but see, like the strings and horn parts, all the strings and horn, what I would do is we would do several tracks of strings, several tracks of horns, and then I would bounce them down to stereo. So there'd be a stereo mix. And then there'd be sometimes I would do some panning. He and I would do the panning, but I think, Just As Long As We're Together probably was the longest one, but we were trying to get like a song. Was it a week, or I'm not sure. It was one track at a time. I mean, the drum parts, the drum parts. I mean, he was a good drummer, but some of the fills, the fills are very musical, and he would work at it. I mean, he would work at it. So I would punch in those tom fills, or he would go back. He was real into, he wanted it to be perfect, and so we kept going back and making sure that it was tight with the bass and just the arrangement on Just As Long As We're Together with the synths answering and the guitar parts and the horns. All those horns were several tracks, because with Gino Vanelli, we used to do the same thing. We'd have tons, we'd have 20 tracks of strings and bounce them down to 2 tracks left and right, so it was a similar kind of situation with For You.
And speaking of the drums, a question that we had, this one would be more for Owen possibly. They want to confirm what the exact make and model of the drum machine it was that you bought for Prince in 1977. That was the first one he used. Was that used in this one, or is it different?
That's pretty much ancient history. There is a name that comes to mind, and I think it was a Lynn drum machine. Does that make sense?
No. For what song are you talking about? In Love?
For the album itself. They were asking which was the original one that was purchased in 1977. What was the one used for this album?
We didn't have a drum machine. He played a pad. We had a pad. He had like a pad, a snare pad, and you could make it into a kick drum, or you could make it into a snare. You could make it into a hi-hat. It was not a drum machine. He played it. We didn't have any sequencers or any of that sort of thing. I've heard podcasts where people say, "Oh, they sequenced that." No, we didn't have any sequencer. He physically played it. It was just a pad, like the drum, the electronic drums. where they have, it was just a round pad, and you could make it into a kick drum, or you could make it into a hi-hat or cymbals. You could do it. It was just one little, like about this, just the size of a snare, and that was it.
I remember we did a test session for Warner Brothers to make sure that he could play all the instruments. So they had us come out to Amigo Studios. I think it was in Burbank at the time. I don't remember where it was. And they wanted to test it and see if he could really play all the instruments. I remember this because there was a lot of comment in the control room about that. Prince didn't know who was sitting in the control room, but a lot of the greatest producers of all time were sitting in that control room. But he went out, and I don't know how much your audience knows about click tracks. It's just almost like a metronome, electronic metronome. He didn't use a click track. He went out and did this exact drum thing as the first instrument to the song that he was recording, without a click track, without a metronome, without any sense of his timing was perfect, and then went back and added a bass guitar. And Lenny, who was head of A&R and also the president of the company, he was blown away by that somebody could actually go into a studio without it. Because Tommy will probably tell you, excuse me, that to do something without a click track could almost be suicide. You really want to get on the beat. And he went out and did that whole session, a whole rhythm section without a click track. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. He could play drums, but we did do a lot of punching to make sure that it was perfectly in time with the track. I mean, basically we started with a Yuri click track and a guitar, and that's how the track started. Every track started that way, and then and then we would build from there. They would go to Rhodes or the horn parts were always like synth parts, and I don't even think they were polyphonic. I think they were just single tracks at that point.
What I remember is, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed that the record plant in Sausalito had the ability to they had a little FM transmitter, so you could do a mix and then get in your car and drive around the block, and the little FM transmitter, it's like you're picking it up. You were actually, it didn't go any further than maybe 5 blocks or something, but you could actually listen to it as if you were listening to it on the FM radio.
Yeah, that was, we didn't, I don't know if we did something like that. I don't remember doing a lot of that.
Tracks, because I remember.
Yeah, because at that point we were more concerned with getting the tracks done. We didn't do that in the mix down. He sat beside me through the whole mix. It was no automation, by the way. We didn't have automation. It was all mixed, by hand. And usually the artist takes the vocal. And so, Warner Brothers called me. Some guy from Warner Brothers called me and said, "What's the deal with the vocal on Soft and Wet?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You can't tell what he's saying." I said, "Well, it was a little risque, and we weren't, but it was, whatever, but it is what it is. It's where we both agreed upon it. There was nothing that went out that we both didn't agree upon. We mixed it, several times. I had several mixes, as you can see, several mixes of everything. And if there was something we didn't like, we remixed it, it was, look, I think it's, I'm grateful that Lenny gave us the ability to go in and do it. And, as far as, for a lot of times, I took the responsibility for making everybody go over budget, and, it was a big deal,
Yeah,
And
that fell on me. I had to go in there and
yeah,
explain why we went over budget. And
I think I was making $50 an hour or something like that. I don't, which is about a quarter of what I make now. But I mean, it's, uh, but at that time it was outrageous. I mean, I remember
I think
telling
we
people,
went, I think it was like 157,000 to make that first album, something like that. Which,
yeah, it's
it,
probably because we had to rent a house and the airplane tickets and all of that sort of thing. But we spent a lot of that money in the studio. I tell you, we were in the studio a long time. Um, it's getting dark in here.
Yes, as Tommy slips in the darkness and we're kind of closing stuff off, you were paying attention. Like, look, he was very young then, his experience, but as you said, he got better, and it looked like you paid attention to his career, not just the massive hit stuff, whether it was musicology or not, but you loved the most beautiful girl in the world. You were paying attention to his career. It doesn't seem like there was any hard feelings on your side at all, even with these ridiculous stories that were going on.
no,
I loved him. I thought I was happy for him. I only thing I ever felt was, it didn't look like he was having a great time. He always seemed to be so unhappy. I mean, I know that there was a persona that he wanted to, a mystique that he wanted to project, but I just thought, that, look, at this kid was, I said this before. I mean, God just gave him this incredible talent that he could play all these instruments at a very young age. I mean, that's just, I mean, you're talking about like Mozart and this kind of, you're talking about people. I mean, the ability to play all these instruments and write the amount of songs. I mean, I don't think every song he ever wrote was brilliant, but there are some that are just amazing, and they're up there with all the best writers. And I think that I was really I mean, I knew, when she put the cassette in the machine, I said, "Who is this?" I knew. I was asked with the documentary. I said, "Well, how did you know?" I said, I just knew. I knew right off the bat. It was like, you could just tell it was something special, and I wanted to be a part of it. But and so I was in a way, and so I don't have any hard feelings about it. Do I wish I had recorded and mixed Diamonds and Pearls? Sure, or Thieves in the Temple, or any of that stuff. I would love to have been there, but he was on a different path by then. It wouldn't have worked any, I mean, the main thing I wanted to project was the fact that I did not fight him at all. We got along just fine. I didn't know what was going on underneath. Owen can tell you about that. But I just knew that Warner Brothers gave me this responsibility, and I wanted to deliver something that was exceptional. And I think for the time, I think it was. So
it was. I mean, it launched.
I'm comfortable with that. Yeah.
It launched his career, and everybody has a beginning. Everybody has a demo tape. Everybody has a first album. But as far as the care that Warner Brothers took in giving Prince the opportunity to produce his own album and picking Tommy to go in there, it worked. So what are you going to say? If something worked, it worked. It's
Right.
Look, I've heard stories about Bruce Springsteen after his first album on Columbia. They wanted to get rid of him, and they didn't like the album at all, and somebody had to go fight for him. But this wasn't the case. Warner Brothers heard it. They knew what he was capable of doing. Tommy was able to get that out of him, because I will tell you this. I mean, look, Chris Moon did the first early recordings, but that was on a little 8-track, and that was a real minuscule beginning. But you don't take anything away from Chris.
Right.
David Z did the demo tape that helped us get the deal, but David did not have the experience that Tommy had at the time. So when Tommy came in and was suggested to us, and Prince, Prince studied Tommy before. I don't know if you know this or not, but he knew what you had done and all that kind of stuff. So he was all for it. There's going to be a natural rebellion, and that's just, if anything happens, that's the way it works. I wasn't, cognizant of fist fights or anything else going down.
No, nothing like that. Nothing
And
like
so
that.
it wasn't like that. And stories grow over the years, and it's like playing telephone, and things. I've heard things about myself that was like, oh, really? That was me? Hey, that's it. I've had people walk up to me and tell me that they were Prince's manager and got him his deal at Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I know. I had people tell me they engineered the first record, and I didn't tell them. I said, really? Oh, that's great.
I play along with it. Somebody came up to me. I was with some. They said, I got Prince's. I was his manager, and I got him his first deal at Warner.
Yeah.
Hey, how did that happen, man? He's really.
That's exactly what I do. It's exactly what I do.
So,
because I know
that's got many fathers.
Right. Look, Tommy's career is vast. The stuff that he's done, the Emmy Awards that you won. Make sure you guys study it. Is there anything in closing, Tommy, that you want people to know about your career, and just anything we didn't bring up regarding the For You record and your involvement?
Well, I think basically about a career in music is a real gift. I think. I mean, in order to work with people of this caliber and to be there and to do what we do, and make it's really art. It's an art form, and you're making art basically that's going to be there after we're not. Okay, and that's maybe why Prince and myself and Quincy and other artists, we strive for perfection, but we never really attain it. It always comes out different than you go in looking for. But it is what it is. It's a creation, and I have been able to work with George Duke and Tom Newman and Nicholas Britell and Jeffrey Osborne, who I think is one of the most underrated singers of all time. I would love to know how to get him into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, if that, but he's never had any recognition, and it's just one of the greatest singers ever. Howard Hewitt. I mean, to be a part of all this is tremendously rewarding to me, because it's I have no regrets about any of it. And even for you, I would be lying if I said there was a disappointment, but I don't have any animosity or any of that. Where there were no fights, there was no, I did want to be part of it, a little bit longer, but you know what? I went on to do other things. So I just think people, I just wanted the chance to say, the things that have been said about how this record was made were just not true, and I think that Owen and I and Prince were all kind of pulling in the same direction. How we got there was going to be, in a creative process, there's going to be different perspectives. And so, I don't have any, I think I'm very, very, very fortunate and to have been able to work with the caliber of the people that I've worked with, and continue to, by the way. And I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Tommy and Owen. If you guys haven't already, got Owen's book. Thank you, Owen, for joining us and for talking about Mo and how important his role in this was happening, and For You being released on Warner Brothers and him signing with Warner's. And guys, make sure to get Owen's book, Famous People Who Met Me. This should really be in your book collection. But Owen, anything in closing that we may have touched on regarding Mo or the For You project?
Well, actually, there was a point where Tommy doesn't remember this, and I've told him this because we were living at the house there, and Tommy had been working for like a week in the studio with Prince, And you hear demos, you do this, and you don't know how it's going to turn out or what's going to happen. And Tommy had been working like a week in the studio, and I came home, and he was sitting on the couch like this, and I thought something was horribly wrong. And I said, Tommy, what is it? And he looked up, and you don't remember this. This is in my brain. He looked up and he said, it's Beatles time. And I knew exactly what he meant, that he had spent a week in the studio with Prince, got that true sense of who he was and what his talent was. And what you were saying at the time, Tommy, was this is something that is going to be lasting forever. This is the real deal.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I have a saying in the business, because I managed a lot of other artists, like Tommy worked with a lot of other artists. There are certain artists that come along, they're flavor of the month. Then there's flavor of the year. Then there's maybe flavor of the decade. And then there's artists that come along every 50 years. Like Dylan and John Lennon, and you can name it. Prince is one of those every 50-year
That's
artists.
right. That's right. I think one of the most important artists in the last 50 years, and he spawned a whole other generation of people that followed his lead. The Time and the Jam and Lewis and Tina Marie. It was a revolution, and we were at the top of it, and that was from the time she put in that cassette. I said, this is special. And
it's interesting that I had been a student of music to know that there was a certain time that different cities exploded. There was the Detroit sound with Motown. There was Philly sound with Gamble and Huff. There was the San Francisco sound. There was the Georgia sound, Atlanta, Georgia. There was Nashville sound. The greatest, one of the greatest accolades I think in my life was to know that I was a part of a sound of a city that became, the Minneapolis sound. And, even though we did the first album in Sausalito, we were of Minneapolis. And that was a real wonderful thing to watch. And the other artists that came out of there, and then there were Prince clones that came out of there, but there were also some real, like Tommy said, some real true talent. And if you go back and look at that first album that Prince did, there were other artists that came before Prince out of Minneapolis that had top 10 hits, believe it or not. But to establish a whole sound and a recognition of a city for a particular brand new sound, that's a pretty good deal. So Tommy was part of bringing that out. So was David C. in his own way at the time, of bringing that out. But Tommy was the launching pad.
You still have artists being, today, Janelle Monáe, Bruno Mars, Silk Sonic. Those are all inspired by him and by that. Without them, without Prince and this record and all these records.
Yeah, and you could go back to, Motown, and you go back, to Ray Charles, and you go back, to the great rhythm and blues artists that, it was all a progression, and this was a definite period of time where this was the changing of the guard, and I mean, I'm really proud to have been a part of it, and so
when I first came out to shop Prince, I would say something to the effect of, well, they would say, where are you from? And I would say, oh, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and they'd say, isn't that the home of the Pillsbury Doughboy? Isn't that, and before that, it was the Doughboy, and now when you see people like Lizzo coming out and so happy to say that she has a connection to Minneapolis, and to do that and to have it be something to be proud of, to have a connection to that. That's there you go.
Yeah,
sure.
there you go. Well, thank
All
you,
right.
Jeremiah. Thank you,
Thank you guys
Owen. It was
so
nice to talk to you. So it was really a lot of fun. And thank you again.
We'll definitely talk soon. Thank you guys. Enjoy the rest of your night. Please make sure to look at Tommy's catalog of achievements that he's done. Make sure you get Owen's book, and we'll be in contact, you guys. Thank you so much for being on.
Peace.
And yes, you guys, I did see a question about I believe they're going to be interviewed on the Netflix docu-series that will be released next year. We're hearing summer 2023. Thanks again for having Tommy on and Owen on. Thank you guys so much for sharing, for being with us live, for checking us out on the replay. Much love, you guys. We'll be back soon. I'm trying to get someone special for you guys. Until I get that wrapped up, I'm not going to say it. But thanks again. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be in contact. Hopefully we're able to get to everyone's questions and have everything covered. Till next time, thank you guys. Thank you, Prince. Much love. Keep it funky, y'all. Thank you.